understanding human communication. I heard this story of a rich man who had discovered that he was going to be dying soon. And so what he did is he left $50,000 cash to three of his most trusted advisors. One was a banker, one was a pastor, and one was a doctor. And what he told him to do is he said, when I die, I want you to take this bag of cash and I want you to lay it in my casket. And so they have the funeral, and the doctor comes by and he puts an envelope into the casket and he walks away. And then the doctor comes by and he lays an envelope into the basket. And then sure enough, the pastor comes and he lays an envelope into the casket. So after the funeral was done, they leave. And as they're leaving, the doctor looks at the lawyer and the pastor and says, I have a confession to make. I kept $10,000 and I only put $40,000 cash into his casket. And the banker looks at the lawyer and says, well, I have a confession to make. He said, I actually put $30,000 in and I kept $20,000. And the pastor looks at the banker and the lawyer and he says, I am ashamed of both of you. That man asked us to put $50,000 that he gave us, that he entrusted us with. He asked us to put that into the casket. And he says, and I'll have you know, I wrote a check for the full amount. And so it goes to show us the importance of communicating with clarity, being precise in what we're trying to communicate. Why? Because there's no purpose in communicating if people are not going to understand what we're trying to say, if they're going to walk away confused. And so we want to communicate with clarity. So what's the big idea? No clarity creates overload in a person's brain. And so brain overload creates a whole variety of issues. And so in an article in USA Today, they did a quick study and they offered 24 different kinds of jams, something that seemed so irrelevant. And as the people would come by and they would try these jams, only 3% of the people bought a jam. Well, they took that number from 24 down to 6, and so they're limiting how many tastes that they can do. And the people who bought the jam, it rose to 30%. And so it shows us that the less options, the more that we can make as people, as listeners, as receivers, we can make a decision. And so it brings us to this point. Less is more. I believe less is more. The less options, the easier it is for us to make a decision. There was another thing that came out, and it showed that we as people, we have too many things that are overloading our mind, people in the workplace. And so they're being overwhelmed with emails, with jokes, with stories, with scam emails. And now you add into the mix social media. We are a group of people that are absolutely overloaded with information. And so what it's creating is it's creating a hard, an issue of us making decisions. We can't choose. You know, you turn on Netflix and we have thousands of options, and so we will browse and look and look and look, and we can't decide what we want to watch, and so we go back to what we know. And so it shows less is more. The fewer options, the easier it is to make a decision. And so there was an article released at healthline.com, and it literally proves and it shows that when we are overloaded with information, when we are overloaded with just too many options, that it leads to anxiety, and then it leads to other health-related problems. And so what is the big idea? We want to communicate with clarity. We don't want to overload people when we're trying to communicate, especially when it's things of importance, of value. We want to give people narrow thoughts. We want to give people limited access because we want people to make a decision. And so the facts clearly support that it is so vital to communicate with clarity. We want action. We don't want confusion. We don't want people walking away confused, but rather we want people walking away knowing what we have called them to do. there was a quote by Bernard Shaw, and it says, "The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place." Think about that. It's the illusion that it has taken place. And so let's conclude with making the decision that we're going to communicate with clarity, bringing people to action. Thank you.